If you want must-see TV, then you need to be watching baseball right now. Forget about Succession, Love Island, or any other garbaggio that's streaming right now, and tune in to the MLB. It's got everything you need. You got infielders knocking each other out in Cleveland.
Anderson square off. They're fighting. They're swinging. Down goes Anderson. Down goes Anderson.
You got the Yankees, who haven't been this bad since the 80s. I mean, they'll probably finish last in the AL East, which hasn't happened since 1990. And they even started a catcher who was batting .095. Seriously, it's that bad. Just ask Brian Cashman.
I know they urgently want to get on track, but I also know that we suck right now, as bad as you can be.
Yes, Brian, you do suck. It's true. Anyways, lots going on in baseball. The Rays gave up their massive AL lead to Baltimore. The Rangers, who I thought were a lock to win the AL West, could be caught up by Houston. And forget the division, actually. They might not even make the playoffs. Imagine picking up Scherzer at the deadline and not making the postseason. Wow. The wildcard races are loaded too, especially in the AL. The Rays are, for the time being, comfortably in. But then it's the Astros, Mariners, and the Toronto Blue Jays. And that's what I want to talk about today. Can they clinch a wildcard spot? And what do they need to do to make that happen? I mean, scoring some runs would be a good start. And if they do get in, where does Yusei Kikuchi fit in? He's been the best pitcher in baseball since the All-Star break. Seriously, like the best pitcher in baseball. And what would be a nightmare matchup for them in the playoffs? The Orioles? It's the Orioles. It's the Orioles, isn't it? God, they beat up the Jays. Ryan Mountcastle, talk about a player who just loves beating up on the Toronto Blue Jays. Anyways, I got questions and I need answers. Maybe Shawn McCormick has them. He'll join me next. I'm Albert Vartanian, and this is Homestand Sports. All right, Shawn, 36 games remaining. One game back of the Mariners for the final wild card spot. This is the Blue Jays I'm talking about. Their schedule coming up isn't that bad. After the next two series against the Orioles and the Guardians, they got a 12-game run against some of the worst teams in baseball. Washington, Colorado, Oakland, and KC. Although KC is like
feisty,
kind of good now. But gets kind of scary. 5 straight series against the teams in their division to end the season for the Blue Jays. And the Jays, by the way, are 12-23 against the AL East, which is not great. So, Shawn, let me ask you this. Will the Blue Jays clinch a wild card spot?
Man, that's a tough question, you know?
Well, that's why I got you on, man. Answer the tough question.
You asked me like a week or two ago, and I would have been like, yeah, like I really feel good about it. and we've been chatting baseball for a while, and I just, this team, I've said it for a long time, is just inconsistency has plagued the Toronto Blue Jays. And I mean, they're a little bit more consistent now, but there's still so many questions to be answered. Maybe not with the pitchers, but more so with the hitters. What, like, they still can't hit with runners in scoring position. Long story short, man. Yeah, I think they can do it, and that's where I'd put my money today. But they have to keep winning games, and that stretch that you mentioned is hugely important against those weaker teams. But they can't be worried about the noise around them. They just have to just focus on winning games, and that's the most important thing. And
it's crazy to think that their biggest strength at the moment is their pitching.
Yeah,
the best ERA in baseball.
Yeah.
If the bats figured it out, we're not even having a conversation about a wild card spot, the third wild card spot. We're probably talking about the Jays winning the division. This is what's so frustrating about this team is, like, last season the bats were fine, the pitching was Yeah. This season it's flipped the other way around. They just can't seem to put it all together. And I'm trying to figure out why. And you look at some of the guys in this lineup, they've kind of been hit and miss. The one constant and consistent has been Bo Bichette, who's back. And you remember back to last September, they rode his hot bat into the playoffs.
Yeah.
So they've done that before come September. I think they can do that again. But it's going to be a lot more difficult now when you got to get past the Mariners, who, I mean, outside of the Dodgers, they may be the best team in baseball right now in terms of how hot they are.
Definitely the hottest. Yeah.
I mean, the Astros aren't even fully healthy yet, and they're just getting better. It's a tall task, bigger than last season, I think.
Yeah, and it was like a few days ago, right? Like it was basically there was only one wild card spot open, and now there's basically 2, even 3 with the Rangers falling down a little bit. You've got the Jays are 1 back. I think the Mariners and Astros are tied, I believe, right?
Half game up. The Astros are half game up. As of recording this, by the way.
And so
and who knows about the Red Sox? I know they're 5 games back, but they can make a run.
Yeah, they can. I think they've been pretenders for a while, but I labeled I think the Mariners as pretenders at the All-Star, or sorry, not at the All-Star break, at the trade deadline.
I think a lot of people did.
Right? And now they were the hottest team in baseball. 8 wins, 3 losses, 8 wins in August. Man, that's crazy. Yeah, this is a conundrum and a half, man, and I'm just like lost on what the Jays can do here to get that wild card spot, because they have the tiebreaker over Houston, but they don't have the tiebreaker over Texas or the
Seattle,
Mariners.
yeah.
So like that's obviously hugely important in a stretch where again every team is so close together. So man, and then you go back to the bats like you were talking about, and Bichette was hot last year. He's just getting healthy, you think, right? So that's important. Now you've got guys like Varsho heating up, Belt's heating up. Belt, second best hitter on the team, OPS right now. What?
Yeah.
And like again, people were complaining about those two guys, Varsho and Belt, at the beginning of the year, right? Chapman was way up here. Chapman for MVP.
Sean, I'm not going to name names, but we did a homestand show, not the Homestand Sports podcast. We did a homestand show.
Yeah.
And earlier on in the season, we had someone, an MLB insider, Blue Jays insider, come on and tell us on the show that Matt Chapman is going to be in the conversation for AL MVP.
Well, I mean, after that April, I mean, he looked fantastic.
Oh, my God. This is why I love baseball.
Yeah.
Because what happens in April has nothing to do with what happens now. Everything changes, man. 162 games.
And you just follow along Twitter and you see, like, again, people are idiots, first of all. But you see, like, trolls, like, talking about Chapman. You see trolls talking about Vladimir Guerrero, right? Like, yeah, Vladdy's hit into a lot of double plays, but to not recognize what kind of special talent he is, and if he can get hot, if he can start hitting the ball out of the ballpark, man, this team could be real scary. I mean, with the rotation and the bullpen, like, can you, like, what are we now? August 23rd?
Yep.
And the leading home run total for the Blue Jays is 18?
I know.
What?
It doesn't make sense.
It makes no sense.
Especially with the bats that they have. Look at Kevin Kiermaier in
Yeah,
the 9
your
hole.
guy.
He has 65 hits from the 9 hole. That's the most in the AL. They're, like, you know what I mean? This is what they just need to put it together.
So again,
figure it out.
So what we chatted about too is like, so I think they're 7th in average, right?
Yeah.
11th in OPS. But then we go back to it. We've gone back to it time and time again, and we've asked insiders, we've asked people, and nobody knows how to figure it out. 25th, 26th with runners in scoring position.
Yeah,
or something.
it's a big problem. Bases loaded, probably even worse.
Like, and the Orioles are 3rd, right? So I mean, if you switch those numbers around, the Jays are the best team in the league.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So, again, it's just a matter of consistency. I said it a few minutes ago. I'll say it again. If the Jays can be a bit more consistent, stop chasing those outside pitches when there's people on base, because that's part of the problem is just they have such good contact metrics. Like, these guys don't strike out that much, like 6th in the league, 6th best rate in the league or something like that. But when they go up and they swing at bad pitches, they roll into double plays, easy outs, right? Like, they're swinging at bad pitches when runners are in scoring position, and that's why you're not cashing in runs. If you wait on a pitch, maybe send one to the outfield, you're at least scoring one, maybe, or you're advancing the runner. Like, I don't get it. I don't think you could get Babe Ruth from the dead and he could explain it. Like, it's some things you just can't. It's a mental thing. It's an approach thing. It's a fundamentals thing. I don't quite get it. And it's something that could sewer the Blue Jays season.
Yeah, and that's why John Schneider is always saying, well, you kind of trust the process. You know, bounces will come our way at some point. But he's been saying that all season long.
But is the process, like, flawed?
He's been saying it all season long. And when it comes to, like, some of these players free swinging, I just noticed it happens later in games.
Sure. When the pressure's on, right? Like,
always. And that's what concerns me about them making the playoffs. I've been on the bandwagon in terms of they'll make the playoffs.
Yeah.
They'll get into the wild card. They'll probably play the Twins, which is a fantastic matchup for them.
Yeah.
And then who would they play? Probably
they'd play the highest seed.
Baltimore,
that would be left.
Texas. Yeah.
The highest seed that would be left.
Yeah.
Which right
So
now
I mean,
is Baltimore.
Yeah, the divisional series is going to be difficult, but I still believe they can get in. And there has been a little bit of consistency. I mean, they have had winning months, right? In April, 18-10, June, 16-11, July, 14-10. They struggled a bit in May. I think they're a game under 500 this month, which will probably change with some of the games that are coming up. So there has been consistency in different spots. But it's just like I said, and we're trying to figure out what they need to do at the plate. But that's the answer: is figure it out at the plate, and everything else will figure itself out.
And I'm not calling for any kind of expansion or any kind of rule change, playoff expansion.
Oh, got you.
But the Jays are the 8th best team in the league, in the whole league, and they're outside the playoffs, right? So that's speaks to how strong the AL is, and B, like. Again, I'm not saying change the format. They've changed it enough, and I think it's good where it is right now. But, I mean, the Jays are a good team. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot you have to change. There's a few things, obviously, you want to strive to be better and strive to be, the perfect ball club. They're pretty damn good, and they're outside the playoffs. It just happens, the Rays are solid. They're slipping a bit. The Rangers are solid. They're slipping a bit. The Orioles are good.
Really good.
Yeah, and then the Jays are better than the Twins. So again, I like that first round matchup. And then they're right there with the Astros and the Mariners. And yeah, I mean I don't know who would want them to face in the first round. Obviously, I'd prefer the Twins, and then we'd go from there and see what happens. I'd like to avoid the Orioles, but again, the Orioles have their flaws. Their starting rotation not great. They have like one of the best bullpens in the league, if not the best bullpen in the league, aside from the Yankees. I think Yankees are one. But
yeah, it goes Yankees, Atlanta, then the Jays actually in terms of best bullpens in the bigs.
And then the Mariners, I think. Yeah.
Mariners, Cleveland, Baltimore, Houston.
Yeah, just the back end of that Baltimore bullpen with Cano and Bautista.
Oh.
Batista, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to face that.
No one wants to. What are you going to do against Batista?
I get Andrew Miller flashbacks, man.
Andrew Miller, what a show
Wow.
that is.
When he was with Cleveland and just wiped out the Jays and just swinging at sliders. Again, sliders. I got to look into some numbers on Jays against the slider.
It's not good.
I assume it's not good based on the eye test and based on what I watch every night, but I want to know the actual numbers because, I mean, it's been bad.
Okay, so you kind of touched on what my next question was going to be in terms of, who would be a nightmare matchup for the Blue Jays. I'd probably say, I don't know, any team in the AL East. For whatever reason, they just can't seem to figure it out, especially against the Orioles. I know last night, which was Tuesday, August 22nd, they won in extras in Camden Yards. A big home run from Brandon Belt, some good base running from Vladdy as well. So they won that game. But against the Orioles, they're struggling. If they do get into that final wildcard spot, they would play Minnesota and then most likely Texas, which isn't a bad run to the ALCS. Mm-hmm. But I think if there's a team to avoid, Sean, it's probably Baltimore.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, again, if they finish in that 6th spot,
they finish in that spot,
they'd be facing the first seed, which has the bye. If they would pass the Twins, right? Yeah. So that's a problem. So I mean, they're 3-8 as of yesterday on the season against the Orioles, I believe, after that win last night. It's a team to avoid. Again, they have their flaws, but man, is their lineup good? Man, is their bullpen good? And their pitchers are scrappy. I mean, they went out and got Flaherty, Dean Kramer, Kyle Bradish. Like they don't have a name, they don't have an ace, but they have guys that can get the job done, right? Like they have every starter is like a number 3. So you're dealing with a lot of consistency and some quality pitchers, guys that can keep the Jays on their toes. Like again, I think they're playing Dean Kramer tonight, who features like 6 pitches, similar to like a Chris Bassett, keep you on your toes. I wouldn't want them to face the Orioles. I guess that out of the top couple seeds, I think that's good. The Rangers are slipping right now. The Rays are slipping with the Wander Franco situation and with McClanahan out. And then, I don't think, again, they'd beat the 3 seed. I assume, fingers crossed, they beat the Twins. You can't count out a team that's winning their division despite the record, right? But I think they would beat the Twins, and then I don't think it would match up well enough to face the 4 seed. So I think you'd be playing either the number 1 seed or the number 2 seed. So you're looking at either the Orioles or currently the Rangers. I mean, it's possible that the Rangers fall out and maybe the Mariners get up that high. I wouldn't want to face the Mariners, one of the hottest teams in baseball. So there's a lot of
Jays do not want to face the Mariners.
There's a lot of seeding to be determined. There's a lot of ball games left, like 36 games left, I think.
36.
And man, it's just that's the thing about baseball too. There's so much time before we actually get into the playoffs. So I like these conversations because it's so hypothetical, and there's a lot to dive into. But it's tough. You have this conversation in another 2 weeks, and when things are starting to get a little tighter and down to the wire, and we'll have probably a couple of different conversations. But the foundation is there for what the playoffs are starting to look like. It doesn't, I'm not worried about Boston catching up. Obviously, the Yankees and the Angels are out of it. So, like, the teams that are sort of fighting for the playoffs right now are the ones that you think a couple weeks from now will still be in the conversation, right? So,
Sean, in 3 weeks from now, we could be talking about what are the Jays going to do in the offseason because there's no chance of them making the wild card. That's baseball.
Yeah, you could fall out of it. I mean, again, luckily they have that stretch of games against the Athletics and the Royals and the Nationals and the Rockies. And again, I say that, but I mean the Nationals are beating the Yankees.
I know, but I was just about to say that.
The Royals are scrappy. They've been putting up good fights against. Again, they played the Mariners well despite losing a couple of those games last week. Yeah, you gotta just focus, and that's what I say. Block out the noise. I mean, you can't control whether the Astros and the Mariners and the Rangers are winning games. You just gotta worry about yourself and win these games, especially against lower level competition.
But we've definitely reached the point where, I mean, fans really start looking at the standings in September, but I think the Jays have already started to do that maybe at the beginning of this month because it's essentially playoff mode already for the Blue Jays. Okay, so let's say I think we're both thinking that they're going to clinch a spot. Are you with me on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so let's say they both clinch a spot. That we both think they're going to clinch a spot. Let's go to the rotation. Guy at the top is Kevin Gausman. Yeah. I think without a doubt, right?
Without a doubt.
The number 2 now is kind of up in the air. It's been Bassett. It's been Rios.
Yeah.
Kikuchi's name was never in there, but it absolutely needs to be. When I looked at this stat yesterday, that Yusei Kikuchi has been the best pitcher starter in baseball since the All-Star break. I couldn't believe it. 1.82 ERA in 7 starts. That's incredible.
Yeah. Like whip just over 1.
He's having a career year, and this is a guy who he completely lost the last season. I wrote him off. Everybody wrote him off. We're like, it was Kikuchi. If this season, heading into 2023, he can be a solid number 4 or number 5, that's fine, and everyone would be happy with it. Now we're talking about a guy who could be the second in the rotation come playoff time.
Well, again, talking about why we love baseball so much, and just like you never know what you're gonna get. Again, you look back to the off season or the preseason of this season. Nobody saw Alek Manoah having this fall from grace, right?
That's a good point.
So he would have been your number 1 or number 2, probably your number 2. Based off again Kevin Gausman, real solid, but
came into the season as the 1 though, right?
Yeah. And then, then that's like you said, Kikuchi was never in the conversation.
Never.
It was either going to be Rios or Bassett. I think Bassett, to me, is out of that conversation now. I don't think, you can rely on him in a big game. I think he allows just too much contact.
Especially on the road.
Yeah, you love those home road splits for Bassett.
Hey, it's important, especially in the playoffs.
No, especially again because you'll be on the road as the if you're the 6th seed or the 5th seed, you're on the road to start. So I wouldn't want to be there. Kikuchi versus Barrios for me is still close. It's still close. I like to ride with the hot hand with Kikuchi just because, again, you said those numbers. I think he's only given up 8 runs in those 7 starts since the All-Star break.
He doesndon't give up a run, like more than a run a game. Well, he did. As I say that, he did it last night, August 22nd against the Orioles.
But like we don't want to dive too much into what happened yesterday. I wasn't happy when he got pulled.
No, me neither.
Schneider's
got a short leash on him, eh?
He gave up some hard contact before that. But man, what else does an ace? Oh, sorry, what else? I call him an ace.
Wow,
right
you what just else, dropped it.
What else does
We're clipping that, by the way. Kikuchi the ace.
What else does he have to do to get a longer leash? Right, 80. I think he's at 82 pitches.
Mm-hmm.
But these games are so important. So like with the bullpen that you have, which you said ranked 3rd, right? With ERA at least, it makes sense.
Yeah, but then Jimmy Garcia comes in and blows it.
Yeah.
But this is across baseball, right? We talked about Felix Bautista. I keep saying last night, August 22nd against Baltimore, he comes in, throws 10 pitches in the 9th. The game's going to extras.
Looked very good.
And Baltimore pulls him. So it's happening across baseball. I think this is with Kikuchi, it comes down to analytics. Because if it's just the eye test, like get rid of analytics, I'm sure Schneider would leave him out there. I'm almost guaranteed of that.
Yeah, I mean, its track record says that they're going to take him out, right? Which is what we saw, I think, on when it was Canada Day, I think he pitched for the Jays. Anyways, around then, there's a couple times where him and Barrios both got pulled a little early, and you could tell that they were upset. And he was upset last night too. And I like that competitive fire. You need that competitive fire in the playoffs. I'm just gonna go with somebody has pitched, a bit longer. It's so tough. I keep waffling between
pick one,
Barrios
man.
and Kikuchi. I'm gonna go with. I want to see who's better against lefties, dude. There's so much analytics.
Of course.
Right? You said. I'm gonna go with Barrios, just based off of his history, his track record. He's been a better pitcher for longer. Neither of them had a great season last season. That's definitely true. But at least Barrios showed last year that he had that consistency. Kikuchi's got that consistency right now. I don't know. It's very tight. I don't think there's a wrong answer. It could be a wrong answer if some one of them goes in and gives up 8 runs.
The hot hand.
Who are you going with? Who are you going with?
Right now, Kikuchi, but the hot hand can cool down. Right? There's still a long time. He's probably got 6 or 7 starts remaining. If they stick to the current rotation. If not, okay, let's say 4 or 5 starts.
Mm-hmm.
Things can, in 4 or 5 starts, a lot can change. Jay's pitchers, for whatever reason, are magnets for line drives. God willing, no one gets hit by a line drive, but anything can happen.
And even Kikuchi had that shoulder issue.
But Kikuchi, okay, he's been the best pitcher in baseball since the All-Star break. But since the start of the season, he's been a pretty good pitcher. He's been that number 3, 4, 5 guy, which is exactly what they wanted. So, going into the postseason, if it's not Kikuchi, then it's Barrios. And if it's not Barrios, then it's Bassett. And if it's not Bassett, then it's Ryu. You know what I mean? So they have options. There's a reason why they have the best ERA in baseball. They have the luxury where their number 2 can be 3 different guys.
Yeah. And again, you don't have to – I'm not jumping into the whole you need to piggyback them off each other either. You could throw Bassett into a bullpen in game if you needed him in a game 3 or something. What is Alek Manoah doing? I think he's just sitting in Toronto. Yeah,
they haven't officially sent him.
He hasn't pitched for the Bisons, and he hasn't pitched for the Jays. He hasn't pitched in about 12 days professionally, 13 days. I don't know, whatever. But yeah, it's a good problem to have. You know what I mean? To be like, who should we start? And it's a debate that we'll have even the couple days leading up to the playoffs if they make it, because you don't have to announce that starter. But so I think if Kikuchi continues on this trek and on this path, I think it's going to be him. If you made me choose today, it would be Barrios, and I'm fine with either decision, to be honest.
Well, I'm really happy you came on because you answered all my questions. Can the Jays clinch a wild card spot?
Yes.
Yes. What do they need to do to make that happen? The bats got to get
consistency.
Yeah. Get consistent with the bats. If they do get in, where does Kikuchi fit in? Not number 2, according to Shawn McCormick, which I'm completely fine with. Yeah. And who would be a nightmare matchup? And I think all Jays fans would probably say the Baltimore Orioles.
Man, that lineup is scary.
But listen, when you get into the postseason, things change. Listen, on the I was watching the Orioles broadcast, and they were even talking about how they don't know who's going to start game 1 in the playoffs. Like, they're still at that point. Yeah. They have multiple guys who probably can, but they don't have that true ace. I think they'd want it to be like a Dean Kramer or a Grayson Rodriguez or maybe a Jack Flaherty, but who knows?
Yeah, they traded for Jack Flaherty, so that makes sense. Kyle Bradish to me, has probably been their best pitcher.
Probably.
Grayson Rodriguez has the best pedigree. So,
but at the deadline, out of all the teams, with the big farm system, I know this is what people are talking about. They did.
They blew it.
Why not go after Verlander?
Yeah.
Go after Scherzer. Even Giolito. I know hasn't worked out for the Angels, but you clearly needed an ace. You have the pieces to make the move. Make the move.
I just want to congratulate you on not bringing up Shohei Ohtani there. It probably pained
Don't make me start crying.
It pained you on the inside.
It hurt.
I think they blew it a bit. And again, this team, I think they weren't expecting to be this good this year. So why mortgage some of the future where you were thinking you were actually going to succeed? They still have a great minor league system, probably the best in baseball.
That's a
right?
good point, yeah.
But again, are they a Verlander or a Scherzer or away? Maybe. What are the second best team in baseball right now behind the Braves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Nobody saw that coming.
Nobody
saw the Yankees at the bottom of the division either, right? So
most of the best teams have essentially 1.5 aces.
Yeah.
Right? Except for the Orioles.
Yeah.
They just have a bunch of really good guys.
They got speed. They're third in runners in scoring position. hit for average.
Yeah.
Walk a lot, steal bases.
Solid players all around the field.
Great bullpen.
Good catcher, great bullpen. Third baseman Ryan Mountcastle.
Jays killer.
Destroys the Blue Jays. I mean, he cannot wait to play the Jays at any time. But yeah, the Orioles kind of blew it. But who knows? I mean, this is a team who can represent the AL. Let's not kid ourselves, even without a true bona fide ace. All right, Sean, I think that's it for the show today.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on.
Thank you, buddy. We'll do this again for sure. 36 games remaining in the Blue Jays schedule. We'll have Sean again on the show to talk about either the Jays not making the playoffs, and we'll talk about their offseason and what's going to happen to John Schneider, and are they going to make any moves, what's happening with Vladdy, what's happening with Noah, yada, yada, yada. Hopefully it's, hey, they're in the postseason. What are they going to do next? So we'll talk about that on the next Homestand show when we get Shawn McCormick on. All right, that's it for Homestand Sports. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and everywhere you find your favorite podcasts. I'm Albert Vartanian, and this has been Homestand Sports.